Okay, wonderful. So these two nominees have been confirmed. Thank you very much, everybody. We now have a full board and I appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to give the floor to, well, I'm actually going to give the floor to Courtney. We're jumping around on this agenda, everybody, but Courtney Macker brought an agenda item to my Courtney Macker brought this agenda item to my attention a couple of days ago. It was on the agenda when we sent it out on Monday night. Public safety has been an issue that's been up for discussion at this community council several times. I know that we all have our concerns. We all have the areas that we are watching and are particularly aware of, but things that happen in our open spaces and in our parks have been a subject of conversation at least since last year. So I'm grateful to Courtney for bringing it up and wanting to bring it out into the open so that we can talk about some of the recurring issues that we see, and we can together as a community, along with LAPD, figure out what solutions we can come up with. So I'm going to give the floor to Courtney, but I also want to tell you all that I contacted LAPD and I asked the captain and the sergeant, along with the SLO, to be on this call today so that we could all have this conversation sort of together and we can understand from LAPD what it is that they face, some of the challenges they face, and some of the measures that they're taking to address these issues, and some of the things they think they can't do, and maybe the community can help. So Courtney Macker, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Miriam. As Miriam touched on, we've had an increase in crimes in our public spaces. Most concerning, it's juveniles that are involved. There's been theft at CVS, disrespect and assault of employees there. There's been drag racing at the park, fighting at the park, lighting off fireworks at the park. And we've recently been made aware that there are a number of kids who've gotten jumped, beaten up, and had items stolen from them, just walking through town, minding their own business. And as a community, I think we're really at our wits' end. I know a lot of people have filed complaints, have spoken to law enforcement, but I think I speak for many, of course not for all, but we kind of feel like we're being gaslit and we're not getting the response that we feel we deserve. And all we're trying to do is keep our public spaces safe and our kids safe and our community overall safe. And it doesn't feel like there are any consequences for this bad behavior. Everyone knows who the players are, and there are no consequences, which is resulting in the violence and the level of crimes escalating. And we're at a boiling point right now, and we really need help, and we really need leadership, and we need to figure out how we can work together with law enforcement. And there are lots of leaders in the community that want to help in any way that we can, but like something has to be done. So that is where we are.
Thank you, Courtney. I appreciate that. I also want to say that Courtney and Jessica do from time to time reach out to LAPD. So they do have conversations. They're not just sort of complaining in the background. They do reach out and they discuss some of these issues. I know LAPD has a lot to say. They are aware of some of the issues and they have taken some measures, and so I want to give the floor to them. But Cindy, let's take your question and then I'll see if Brian's ready to jump in. But you're still mute.
Courtney, what did you mean when you said everybody knows who these guys are?
Law enforcement knows who these kids are.
Is it the same? So they know who the kids are.
They're aware of a lot of these kids. Yes.
So we don't know
junior high, middle school kids. Middle school kids.
From what we've been told, mostly high school.
High school.
Again, we're looking for a solution, and we've reached out and we've provided information, and we also want parents, a lot of parents that their children were victims, they didn't even know that this was going on. The kids are really scared. And they're scared to come forward. They're scared of retribution. And so we want any parents, sorry, I forgot to put this in the chat. Any parents that please talk to your kids and see if they know anything that's been going on in town, if they see something on the weekends or anytime. Please know that you can email me. I'll put my email address in the chat. I will be a vault. We're just trying to make the community safe, but if your kids have seen something or been a victim of something, we really need to know, because the more voices we have, and we already have a number of people who have come forward, and we're getting more by the day. The problem is very widespread.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to clarify, they don't know, I mean, per my conversations with LAPD, and they're on this call, they can speak for themselves. They don't know for sure that it's the same set of people over and over, but they have been able to identify a couple of high schoolers that are there over and over again. And they've actually reached out to the high school. They've had the deans pull these kids out and talk to them, but that has not deterred the behavior. The crimes are not being reported. That in fact is true. So no one is calling the report line, sitting on the telephone and actually reporting the call. But I agree with Courtney. This has to be a community response, and somehow we have to let families know that they should be reporting crime. If their kid comes home bruised and bloodied, they should be reporting these crimes, because that does help us figure out a response. So Chris, and then Steve, and then let's see if we can go to LAPD. Thanks.
Thanks, Mariam and Courtney. Thank you. I have heard about it as well. I haven't personally witnessed it, and my kid is way out of high school by now. But so as far as the involvement of Pali High, it seems to me they should be more involved. I know the police have limited resources, and I want to get into that. Let's let the police speak. But you say that they've spoken to some of the people that are known to have been doing this, and it hasn't deterred them. I don't know what couldn't the high school, and I don't know their capacity, do something more, like hold a rally, or have a special education during the day to bring this to the fore. I'm not sure if that'll help, but maybe something more in the way of public discussion and encouragement. And I honestly don't know what that is, but perhaps with the principal's help, that might happen. And I don't know, honestly, this is a parental issue as well. If you know who these kids are, why isn't someone doing more to encourage the parents to stop the behavior? I don't know if they can stop it entirely. We're realistic here, but again, I think a larger approach is needed, as I'm sure you're calling for as well. So thank you so much.
I do want to say that LAPD has suggested that this is a communications thing, that we should try to reach out and educate parents, or at least get information out there so the parents know that they should be watching their kids, or at least being mindful of where their kids are. We had this idea of maybe reaching out to the schools, to both Pali High and the local elementary school, and asking them to put a habitual message into their newsletters, which go out. Because I think, as you all know, the public schools in the Palisades bus kids in from areas outside of where we might have reach, Brentwood and Pacific Palisades. I mean, certainly PPCC wouldn't have reach, but we are trying to figure out if the schools can actually help. So it was Chris, and then Steve Crone. Let's do Genevieve and Kimberly.
Miriam, I had my hand up. I put it down. I have some questions for the officers in this regard.
Okay.
And I'll wait till they come on.
Okay, I'm going to take a couple of comments and then I'll open it up to the officers. So Genevieve, Kimberly, Daphne.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to add that I personally, both of my children have had experience with this in the April, May, June timeframe. My understanding is that the one with my daughter, she was in 5th grade at the time, ran into some of these kids at CVS. Somebody assaulted her friend, like left a black eye, chased my daughter. My understanding is it was reported to the police, but these were definitely junior high students. Similar incident, same exact kid, same description at the rec center. My son, who was in 1st grade at the time, playing handball, took his handball, chased him around. My nanny got involved. They called her the B word. Bunch of parents kind of saw it, supposedly called the police. So I just wanted to add in there that I don't think this is limited to just high school students.
Wow, thank you, Genevieve. Kimberly, Daphne?
Yeah, so I actually ran into Courtney a couple of days ago at CVS, and we were talking about this. And what occurred to me, and the stuff I've also read about and heard about, much of this is occurring at the rec center. which is in the Huntington, which I know Palisades Patrol, Scott Wagon Sellers Company, and other private security companies are hired by so many Huntington residents. It seems to me that that would be also an avenue to have them step up and bring their patrol cars on Friday night at 10 p.m. at the rec center, or, you know, whenever these things are occurring with explosions and partying and kids and whatnot. Because some of the stuff that they're doing is not against the law. Obviously, some of it is, but it seems to me that if this is happening at the rec center, this is part of the Huntington. There's a lot of people in the Huntington that pay for private security. So to get those people on board would be my suggestion. Thanks.
Thank you, Kimberly. All right, Daphne, and then Zelda. Daphne, and then Zelda, and then Officer Espen, I'm going to come to you.
Just two quick things. I'm happy to talk to Dr. McGee. I'm still on one of the committees there at the high school in terms of putting the message out. But I want to make sure that, you know, just so people know, nobody's being bussed in for the high school. Kids are paying for the buses to come there. So it's not like we're bringing in people into the community that aren't participating in the community and paying to be here. Even though it's a public school, since it's a charter school, LAUSD doesn't provide busing. So just so people know that for,
Okay.
And there's maybe like 3 kids a year that come into Pali Elementary, and I don't think any to Marquette. So these are kids that are getting here, who live here, who may be a little wild and not supervised. I can't speak to it, but I'm happy to, if somebody wants to reach out to me and provide info, or the LAPD, I'm happy to talk to at least Pam McGee. I don't know the current principal at Revere.
Thanks, Daphne. So when I alluded to being bussed in, I didn't necessarily mean the mode of transportation to get there. I just wanted to make the point that there are people who attend these schools from zip codes outside of where we, for example, PPCC, would have access. I also want to say that both Pam McGee and Lori, both of whom you know, Daphne, at Revere and Pali High, are open to content. They're perfectly open to us giving them content. We've just never made that strategy before. We've never actually, you know, said to LAPD, hey, let's mount this communications campaign, nor have we approached them for any kind of habitual access to their newsletter. And I think they would be open. We haven't gone there. And you know, as Courtney says, we haven't had this community conversation. Hopefully this is the start of it. So Zelda, and then I'm going to go to LAPD. And Zelda, ladies and gentlemen, is from the Pali Bowl HOA. She's not on the board, but happy to hear from her.
Hi, thank you for having me. Yes, I'm the president of the Pali Bowl HOA, and so this conversation actually is sort of a mystery solved for us because we experienced the fireworks, and amongst chit chat in our community, we're kind of going, "What is that all about, and what do we do about it?" And unfortunately, when we experience it, we call in 911. We don't know what else to do, and we addressed that a little bit on our meeting last week with the officers, but we can't get anybody to show up for things like this. So our concern obviously is mainly fire with the fireworks. And thank you very much for addressing it and bringing this up. I'm not sure what we can do from down here other than report it. So, we're a little bit of a helpless, in terms of that. Karen's going to be addressing the brush clearance a little bit later, which we've been successful at. And so I've worked really hard with the brush clearance officer to get that hillside cleared on our part of it. And those fireworks were a really huge concern for us. So thank you for addressing it. And I don't know, we'll do whatever we can from down here to help report it or monitor it as well.
So first of all, I want to say thank you for all the work you did on the brush clearance. That was huge. I also want to say, I think you reporting it, you calling 911 and reporting crimes is super helpful to LAPD. And at this point, I want LAPD to talk about. So I don't know if we want to start with Captain Gabalden, which I'm happy to, or Senior Lead Officer Brian Espen, who is probably with specific happenings. Brian, you want to lead us off?
Marion, I'll just start off. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you, Captain.
Okay, and thanks again for having me. I just want to do a quick introduction of myself. I'm Rich Gabalden. I'm the area captain of West Los Angeles. I've been there. This is my 4th month that I've been there. So I'm still kind of learning the area. I kind of understand Palisades a little bit because I had some family friends and spent a lot of time there as a kid. So I'm kind of familiar with the area. Not so much directly the issues that you're having and you're bringing it up. And I appreciate all the involvement of everyone that's concerned with these issues. And we're here to help with these quality of life issues. You know, the challenge that we have our West LA is always going to be resources. You know, we only have one car up there in the Palisades. We have our beach detail that covers the beach detail. And that's pretty much it as far as once the beach detail goes home, we got one car at night up there. And if they get a radio call or they make an arrest or something to that effect, then we're relying on the other cars to come in and handle these kind of problems or any of these crime issues. So resources are a challenge. We could have a long discussion about the juvenile justice system, about juvenile diversion, about the closing of juvenile halls, the probation department being understaffed. I mean, we could have a 4-hour discussion on some of the issues. Then you throw in COVID and all the pent up energy these kids had from being inside for so long. So we're seeing it not just in the Palisades, but we're seeing it all over the city in pockets of juveniles acting up in large groups, whether it be fighting, whether it be disorganized retail theft, whether it be vandalism. It's a lot of just pent up frustration, and it seems to us like a lot of lack of parenting in some of the cases, or the majority of the cases. But like I said, that's just a large discussion to have that we could have more when we have more time. But I wanted to introduce myself. I've been 29 years on the job. My assignment here at West LA, I hope, is my last one. I have about 2.5, 3 more years to go on the department. Then I plan on retiring. So it's a great place. I love it so far, and I thank Miriam and all of the community members that I've met so far have been very pro police, very pro West LA. I appreciate your support. I stopped in Brentwood today with my partner, Captain Tiano, and got a cup of coffee. And I was just taken aback at how many people came up and wanted to talk or wanted to thank me for my service or thank the officers for his service. So it goes a long way, and I make sure I reciprocate by thanking them, but also letting the officers know that we have a community that supports us here, and some of the divisions throughout the city, that's not always the case. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Brian, and then I'm going to have him kind of talk about some of the specific problems and some strategies that we talked about with him and Sergeant Alpert about addressing these issues that you guys have brought to our attention. And then we can kind of do a little Q&A, Miriam, however you want to run it. After we kind of throw it out in a discussion and some more specific comments or questions that I can answer, or Brian Espin can answer, or Sergeant Alpert could answer. But thank you. I appreciate you guys all being here and give me the opportunity to speak to you. So if that's okay, Marion, I'll let Brian kind of talk on what the plan is, or some of the issues that he sees, and what we plan on kind of moving forward to address some of these quality of life issues you're talking about.
Okay. And then I definitely want to make sure we get to reporting. You tell us what you consider as a report. I want to make sure that the community is lodging everything that they see, all the crime that they see. I want to make sure that it's being recorded somewhere. Brian.
All right, good night, guys, or good evening, guys. Sorry. So yes, I don't know if you guys saw my last crime update that I sent out yesterday, I believe. There was a little small paragraph that I put in there. A few residents and parents have reached out to me. I guess somebody next door, they said for everybody to email me when about the issues in the park and the juvenile activity. So I just wanted to throw it out there in the crime update of my responses, kind of been just the same to everybody. I and LAPD, we are aware of the issues up there involving the kids. Some of the issues that we have is obviously the resources. I know when somebody does call the police 911 or the non-emergency line, those wait times are very extended. I completely understand that. And I even, one of our officers here tried calling just to see the non-emergency line to see how long the wait time was. And it was 45 minutes plus, I think. But that's just like us for the police side. Our dispatchers are super short staffed, so they're doing the best they can. So like Miriam said, and I encourage everybody, as frustrating as it is, if they see something, to call the police, whether it's 911 or the non-emergency line, because I do need that data recorded, an incident number, whether we get there in time as much as we want to. Sometimes we're not there in time. After the incident's over, officers will show up an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours later, depending on how busy it is that day or night. But I still use that data as showing the issues that we're having up there. When it comes to some of the juvenile activity, things that I have done already, I have already reached out to Paul Revere Middle School. I've went and spoken to the dean at Pally High. The kids that were allegedly involved in a lot of this behavior issues up in the area, they're not doing anything on school grounds. Everything that's happening is in the late afternoon to evening hours outside of school. So what the school staff had told me is they're very limited in what they can do. They can't do any, there's no punishment, there's nothing, consequences that they can necessarily do if nothing's really done on the campus. But the dean did pull one or two of the kids out, had a conversation with them, letting them know that their behavior is on the radar of the school, as well as us, LAPD, with law enforcement and school police, and same with Paul Revere. So conversations have been made with the school, but like I said, they're very limited in what the school can do in regards to consequences with some of the behaviors with the kids if it's not done on campus, if it's outside of school. When it comes to the fireworks and the cars doing donuts, yes, that is a crime. They can be cited and arrested for that. For the donuts, it's the vehicle violation. It's a citation, obviously. For the fireworks, that is a municipal code. It is a misdemeanor. So if a kid is caught with fireworks in their possession, they can be arrested or cited with it for a misdemeanor for having the fireworks in possession. The hard part for us is we cannot be there 24 hours a day. I wish we could. I wish we could put a patrol officer every weekend in the evening to kind of deter the crime. Unfortunately, we just don't have the resources to do that. So we are stuck between a rock and a hard place where we have to wait for that call to come in, and then a unit or a patrol unit gets dispatched there. I will say this though, we did do a plainclothes or undercover task force up at the park. I think it was last month or a couple weeks ago. We had some undercover officers up there in the park, and they did observe a lot of the juveniles and kids up there, but nothing that they observed was illegal at the time. As Kimberly mentioned, the gate security, Pally Patrol, they were actually up there at the same time and kicked all the kids out, as well as the undercover officers out of the park, which is good. And that's what we want, the deterrence. So the officers are not able to do any enforcement or see anything criminal behavior. Captain, I'll throw the captain a bone here, or actually I should say you throw me a bone. Tomorrow and Saturday, he was able to give us our violent crime task force overtime fund. We'll say it was very gracious of him, and we'll see how we can slide it in a little bit more. But myself and a couple officers will be up there tomorrow and Saturday evening up until 11 o'clock at night to try to deter the behavior of the kids. But like I said, that's just this weekend. We can't be there every weekend. We can't be there every day. It is gonna, as Courtney, we need to come together as a community, as a neighborhood, and have this conversation with families and people that have kids. One of the things that I'm going to bring up is obviously most of the stuff's happening between 8 when it gets dark. Now it'll start getting dark earlier, but between 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock at night, a lot of these kids are out and about. So these conversations need to be had with families and parents as why the kids are out that late, and why are they out kind of roaming around in the village and in the park area if it's becoming such a problem. So if you have neighbors, if you have kids, have these conversations. Not saying that all the kids are involved in this illegal activity or the crime, but unfortunately what might end up happening is that added saying is guilty by association. There might be some kids, the good kids, that are not involved in this criminal behavior or anything of the nuisance, but them just hanging out and just being around that park or the problem areas, or even the group of kids, could associate themselves and they could get caught up in something. As Courtney brought up, there was some discussions about a group of kids that were being bullies basically in the neighborhood. I am aware of one of the kids that is being named, and then there's a group of kids that are possibly involved that hang out. The Paul Revere principal gave me a list of names of the kids that were all hanging out together when they were in middle school. Now they're in high school. So as of right now, we don't have any legitimate crime to tie them to, other than kind of what's been being discussed in the community of certain kids are being involved in certain things. So if you believe, or if you have a child that has been physically bullied, where they've been beat up, their sweaters, backpacks taken, that would be considered a robbery. So we, LAPD, would like to know that, because that's something that we can document and that we can actually do an enforcement. Our investigators, detectives can follow up and then see if the crimes are related, see who committed the crime, and then we can do an enforcement. We can make an arrest. Most of the time right now, depending on what the crime is, if it's a non-violent crime, most of the arrests that we'll make with especially with juveniles, they usually get it's called the diversion program. Instead of spending time in juvenile hall or jail, it's they get released to their parents, and it's almost like they have to do kind of like community service, where they have to check in, and they're on probation. So depending on the crime that's happening, most of the juveniles will be put in this diversion program, and that's just to alleviate the overload of the criminal justice system, the courts, and so on. Let's see what else.
So Brian, I want to
Yeah.
highlight a couple of the things that you said. First of all, I'm going to show you a report, and I want you to go over that report. I don't think on that report are any of these assaults. So
Correct.
I'm going to show that report. We can talk about it. What I want to know is if there are parents, families whose kids are coming home with a bloody nose or a ripped shirt or a broken rib, as happened a few months ago, or broken noses, which I've heard about. Why are they not calling to press charges? I mean, and what can we do to encourage them to do that? I understand that the juvenile justice system might be a revolving door, and I don't know that we necessarily want to land these kids in jail, but once parents realize that they're going to get a call from LAPD, or that, kids are beginning to press charges, maybe that'll be a deterrent in and of itself. Maybe that prompts parents to pay a little bit more attention. So I'm going to show your crime report. You tell me if any of these incidents of park vandalism or activity are on this crime report. And if they're not, please tell us how we can encourage people to report these crimes.
So on the crime report, I put out part 1 crimes. Battery, people getting in a physical altercation, is not considered a part 1 crime unless there's a robbery involved where they take somebody's stuff. So if there's force or fear used to take somebody's stuff, that's considered a robbery. So that would be listed if that occurred. A regular a fight between two people, whether it's adults or kids, would not be listed on the crime report, just because that is considered a battery. It's not a part 1 crime. So that's why it wouldn't be listed on there.
Okay, if a kid gets beaten up at the park, if a kid gets beaten up at the park, they go home, their mother calls LAPD and says, my kid just came home with a broken rib, we're on our way to the hospital, I want to report this crime. Would that make it onto your report?
No, that would not. That particular, unless it was a serious injury and aggravated assault, where there's weapons used or serious bodily injury, then that would get listed on the crime report. But if it's a basic battery, it's like a fight between kids or adults, that would not be listed on the report.
Okay.
So I get,
parents were
and
to
the reason
call
I say
you-
that is I get the reports daily of what's going on in the Palisades, and some of them are domestic violence, and a lot of that stuff people want it to be private. Same thing with the batteries and so on. So that stuff wouldn't be listed on the crime report.
If a parent were to call you and say, my kid got beaten up last night, I think I know a couple of the families or the kids or whatever, what would you do with that information? What would you do with that information?
Yeah, so what would happen is if anybody can file, so say if a child is involved in a fight and says, hey, this person or a group of kids beat me up, we would do a battery report, whether it's me or the patrol officers would come out and do the battery report. I would prefer you call the non-emergency line and have officers come out and do the report right away versus emailing me depending on when I'm available to come out and do the report, which I don't have a problem doing the report, but I'd rather get it done immediately. The sooner the better. So kid comes home, says they got beat up by one person, a group of people. They call the police. Police come out and do a battery report. Once that battery report is submitted, it gets entered into our system, and then it gets assigned to a detective. Now, some of the issues that we were kind of having earlier with regards to what Courtney was referring to as the kids getting beat up earlier. A lot of the kids were afraid to come forward. They were worried about retaliation. So if there is no report where our victim, whether it's a kid or an adult, can say that, hey, I got beat up by this person or these group of people, there's no follow-up for the detectives. So you can call and make a police report for getting for a battery for getting beat up, but if there's no follow-up information, it doesn't go anywhere. It's just documenting you got beat up. That's it. So if we are doing a battery report, we want our suspect information so the investigators, detectives can do a follow-up, and then they can do some enforcement, whether it's an arrest, whether it's the diversion program, whether it's probation. What ends up happening is we as LAPD, we're not the judge and jury. We will make the arrest for the battery if the victim so wishes, but then it goes to the CA's office for the filing, whether they're going to prosecute and have community service, diversion, jail time, whatever it be. They're the ones that determine what the consequences will be. For us, we would just take the report, and then once our investigators and the CA's office says, yes, this person is guilty of beating somebody up or taking their stuff, then now we can go make that arrest. So I encourage everybody to call the police, make the report. But if you are going to do that, we need suspect information of who did it. Otherwise, there's no follow-up. The detectives have nothing to follow up. So it's just a paper trail of a battery that occurred, but then nothing gets done about it other than it just gets filed saying that we had a fight in the Palisades, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. There are a bunch of hands up, and I'm going to go in the order that I see them. There are also a lot of community members. There are 52 people on this call. There are community members who are not on the board who have something to say. I see it in the chat. I'm going to invite everybody to please raise your hands. Everyone, please be as brief as you can so we can hear everyone. I don't know that we're going to emerge from this meeting with a solution, but I do know that we'll emerge from this meeting with a sense of how the community feels. And I think that's important. It's important to me. It's important to all of you who have connected. And I have a feeling it should be and probably is important to LAPD. So everyone that's dropping stuff in the chat, please do raise your hands. We'd like to hear everybody and just saying, be brief, please. So it's going to be Michael Edlin, Rob Weber, Daphne Gronick, Andrew Wolfberg, Haldis Toppel. All right. So Edlin, Weber, Gronick, Wolfberg, Toppel. Michael.
Just wondered if there was a community private patrol that was there from the hours of 4 to midnight, which is apparently when this usually is happening. Would they be empowered to enforce any regulations or laws, or would perhaps just their presence be a sufficient deterrence, in your opinion, Brian?
So any security that we can have or eyes out there is a deterrent, and that's what I would rather have. Like Miriam said, we don't want to put kids in jail that for even though they're not being so nice, but they're for being kids. So having security out there as a deterrent is a help. Security can place somebody under a private person's arrest. They don't have the powers of arrest like police officers do, but they are able to place somebody under private person's arrest. For security, it's whatever properties they're contracted with. So a security guard can't be driving around the street and then see something happening on the public street, unless they can do a private person's arrest for certain crimes. But in general, it's more the deterrent. So it's what we call a force multiplier. So security is a good idea for sure. Cameras are a great idea because then if we're able to document certain individuals, certain vehicles, the investigators, detectives have something to follow up on.
Thank you.
I think most of you know that I spoke to Scott Wagenseller and he said the same thing. He said they can at times make citizens arrest, but they won't give us this service unless the community pays for it. That he made quite clear to me. And I've texted him now to see if we can get him on the call, but we can have him another time. All right. So Weber, Gronick, Wolfberg.
Hi, I want to thank all three officers for your time tonight being here explaining what you're doing. I will say that I'm sure the community would appreciate if we saw you more out in the community, particularly in the park and the village, CVS in particular. At the times that Brian, you said you're aware this activity is happening, which is mostly around sunset until 10, 11 o'clock at night, mainly Friday and Saturday nights. I'm happy to hear that you had undercover units there, but I personally think that we just need more police presence out there. Just for some context, my home backs up to the rec center. I've lived there for 20 years. The activity of the kids being rowdy at night and lighting off fireworks has just gotten worse and worse, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years. It's noticeably much worse than it's been in the past. I have at times made the call to the non-emergency line. I'll be honest, I don't call every time because I don't have time to spend 45 minutes to an hour every Friday, Saturday night waiting on hold. And I know that a lot of my neighbors have the same feeling because they've done the same, and they don't really see results. So I know your job is hard. I know that you've got resource constraints. I just hope you hear us here tonight, that you know the areas of trouble, you know the times of trouble. We'd love to see you out there some more. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, Andrew Haldis.
I don't know, it was presented as a quality of life issue, but I think it's beyond that, and maybe the police definition of quality of life versus what the residents believe is quality of life. When there are injuries and fireworks and stuff like that, that may be quality of life in other places, but in the Palisades, it's more significant. The other question I have is, what about enforcement of the curfew, the 10 o'clock curfew? Is that something that the police would be willing to do a few times a month, to drive through and basically push the kids out of there?
The 10 o'clock curfew at the park, you mean?
Well, yeah, in general in the city. I think for under 18, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, is that the rule? Is that ever enforced?
Yes. So there are plans in the works right now where I'm going to be setting up more undercover task force, and then also what we call a curfew task force. But like I said, that resource wise, that comes to our gracious captain giving us the overtime funds to get officers out there. Because like I said, I can't, like right now we have our patrol unit out there. I can't grab them when they're handling all the radio calls. I can't grab them to go out to the park and the areas at 10 o'clock at night and pull them away from handling the radio calls. So that is something we are in talks with the command about, but it's all funding and resources. But yes, that is something that we are looking into, is starting to do curfew enforcement up in the area.
Okay, Haldis and then Daphne, I had said, and then we'll do Claudia Filler and MK. I don't know who you are, but I see that you've got your hand up. So we'll Haldis and then Daphne.
Yeah, question. Could parents be called if kids are violating curfew, if they're in the park after closing, which could be potentially a trespassing, if they beat up a kid, not necessarily injuring, where you would consider it a minor incident. A call to parents to pick up their kids, I tell you, has great traction. The appearance of an officer in somebody's front door delivering a kid has even bigger traction. We had a SLO 20 years ago that would do exactly that. And I've had calls from parents thanking that they saved the kids' lives when they were caught speeding. So is the parent involvement in picking the kid up or just notifying the parents, something that LAPD could do. I'm not saying that they should put them in jail or arrest them, just deliver them to their parents.
Yeah, that's something when we do a curfew violation, we generally, depending on time and how many resources we have, we will generally do that. It's considered an arrest. The juvenile will get a citation for a curfew violation, and then either the parent will come pick them up, or we will take them to the parent's house. But yes, that is something we have done in the past.
Thank you.
So apparently LAPD had a task force running at the park a couple of weeks ago where they had undercover people observing what was going on at the park, and they were getting ready to do just that. They were getting ready to arrest the wrongdoers and maybe deliver them home and have that conversation with the parents. But then apparently a private security patrol came around and dispersed everything. So all the time that LAPD had spent in that undercover kind of task force was wasted because the private patrol came around and dispersed everything. So we all talk about private patrol. I think it's great, but unless there's coordination, it's not always helpful. That's just a little information I was given. So Daphne, then MK, then Claudia Filler, then Jennifer. And so if you're logged in as iPhone or MK, I can't really call on you. Hopefully you know who you are, but Daphne, then Claudia.
A quick question and a comment. To the extent things are happening late in the afternoon and kids are returning to Pali High to try to then get on buses, that's actually something they're not allowed to do. Once they leave campus, they're not allowed to return. So one of the things that could be done technically is make sure that the school knows, and they could tell them they're no longer allowed to take the bus, because once they're off campus, they're not allowed to come back on. So if anyone is known, that is something they can do, and they can bar them from the bus. So that would make it a problem. Question, in some communities, I know that there are volunteers that help with 911. I don't know if that's possible, but it's just a question to raise. I don't know that there's probably privacy issues and all of that, but I don't know if anything has ever been.
Am I the only one that lost her, or did everybody lose her?
Yeah,
Okay.
she froze.
Okay. Still come
But
back.
that is the volunteers to work our dispatch is a great idea. I know we have volunteers that work in our station every now and then that help out. But yeah, there is they do have to get vetted and full background because they are exposed or able to see private information. So I don't know how that would work with the dispatching, but that is a great idea.
Okay, we'll make sure she knows that when she comes back. All right, Claudia, then MK, then Jennifer, then iPhone.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
My name is David, and I'm here to represent older victims. I'm so glad that this group is together because September 5th, Claudia and I were having dinner at Casa Nostra, the Italian restaurant, and across the street in the US Bank parking lot, I was accosted and spent the evening at St. John's emergency room. I had to have stitches in my head. I had bruised ribs. I had a hematoma on my forehead. I had 2 black eyes, and I was messed up pretty bad. And I just think that, unfortunately, it's a situation where, as he said, I said, because even though he attacked me, he called 911 and said that I opened his car door and pulled him out of the car, which is not what happened, but of course I can't prove that. So I was totally caught flat-footed. I had no idea. He was just raving mad for some reason. I don't know why. And he took it out on me, and I was not ready for it. So it's not just the kids. There's violence going on and I've heard that some of these people in the high schools have been harassing older people in the neighborhood as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you for sharing that, and I'm sorry you had to experience that. Brian,
Me too.
did that come up on the crime report? I mean, it sounds like it was a year ago, but would that have come up?
No, that one was not. I saw the report that happened just earlier this month, correct?
Yes.
3 weeks.
Yeah. So I saw the report for that, but yeah, that was not on the crime report or the crime update. Sorry. because that came out as a battery.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was listed as a felony assault.
Okay. So okay. MK, if you wouldn't mind telling us what your name is.
Melissa. So, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah. So, this is for Officer Epson. One of the things that, what we're finding to put together this group of moms and victims who have been assaulted by the group, the main group, these teens at Pali High. And what we're really, we have all these people who have been held hostage, who have been, had battery, assault, had knives pulled on them, guns pulled on them, brass knuckles, tasers. And the reason why the kids will not come forward is because they're so scared of the ringleader of this group. And we even have moms who will not make reports because they're scared that that information is going to get back to the main suspect, and that the main suspect is going to beat up their child. And so my question for you is, this really has gotten out of hand. We have a growing list of victims, and the culprit, without naming his name, has not only beaten up children and teens, but has beaten up, and there's two elderly victims in the Palisades. And so what do you want us to say to them to encourage them to write a report when we can't guarantee their safety?
That one's going to be hard, because that one is just, you have to have a conversation with your kids and how comfortable they are. And like I was mentioning to some of the other parents earlier, that is honestly very difficult, because I understand the kids are scared, they're worried about the retaliation. The person that you're referring to, the main player, we'll say the main culprit, has been, because it's a juvenile, I'm very limited in what information I'm allowed to give out. But with the battery that occurred with the adult, that was handled with investigators, detectives, and there was diversion that was given to the kid. As of now, since that diversion has been implemented, there has been discussions with this kid from our juvenile officers. They've gone up there, spoke to the mom, they spoke to the kid. The school, Pali High, has spoken to the kid as well. I really don't have an answer of how to kind of coerce or tell the kids to come out and make a report. The only thing I can say is, if the kids are really worried and scared right now, it's I tell them to avoid this group of kids. And with that, I mean, not be out at 10 o'clock at night, hanging out at the park, not be out in the evening hours at the village where some of the stuff's happening for right now, while this activity is occurring, until we can at least try to figure out the players that are involved. Because I know there's kind of been discussion of, we know who's who, but I have a list of kids that we're all hanging out together, but I don't have a list of kids of who's doing what. That's the difference. So I can't make assumptions and say, oh, this person's guilty of this, unless I have, for us, a crime report, a police report saying this person or this group of people did this, and then now the detectives have something to follow up on.
Okay,
I really
just real quick
don't have an
question.
answer to say, like, oh, this is how you talk to your kids to do it. It's the kids need to be able to kind of do it on their own with the help of the parents, and I will come and talk with the kids for sure. I mean, and let them know that, I mean, I can't be there all the time to protect them, but you just have to be aware of what's going on around you, and just be avoiding of certain individuals right now.
Is there a way to file a report and make sure that it doesn't get back to the suspect? Like, what's that process?
So once a police report is done, it does become public record. There's very
The
limited
name of the reporter, even if they're a
reports.
juvenile? So even if the person making the report is a juvenile and there's good reason for their parents to want to protect their identity, that portion would also become public?
Certain crimes are allotted confidentiality. So for the battery for a fight, that I can't give 100% answer if that would qualify for the confidentiality, but there are certain reports, like rape and certain other ones where you can have confidentiality where the report is still public, but the victim information is kind of redacted and what is not public. But let's say if it ever goes to court, if there ever is a filing or then obviously the victim has to come forward. So eventually it'll come out. Eventually it'll come out in the end if it ever gets to that point. But
okay, but we're also
the report itself is still public, but the information of the victim can be confidential.
Okay, but we're at the point where we're thinking if some families come forward and make reports, even if we can keep the names of the under 18 complainants confidential, that in and of itself will serve as a deterrent, because the parents of the children who are doing wrong will have some sense of responsibility. I hate to use this word, but some embarrassment, maybe some community embarrassment, and then they'll begin to speak to their kids and have the activity stop. I find it, for lack of a better word, appalling that you guys are aware, not you guys as in just you, but that the community is aware that there's one particular person who's a bad actor who happens to be a juvenile and has been spoken to by LAPD as well as school deans and is still out there doing his thing. We're still waiting for somebody to be bold enough to file a report. Just seems incredulous to me. All right, Jennifer, and then iPhone.
Hi. So we live next door, or we back up to the park, and I just want to address kind of the nonstop, 2 to 3 times a week, lawless activity that we experience as park neighbors. We have done anything and everything that LAPD has asked us to do. We have sent videos, we've run over there and personally captured videos and photographs of these kids. They're setting off M80s, fireworks. We posted the videos that have been distributed, and we get very little to no response back from LAPD. We sent in the videos of the kid that got severely injured, last summer. No follow-up on that from LAPD. It's just incredible what we as residents are having to deal with, and just not getting any tools to address this. There's no patrol out here. It's the same time every weekend. And, we need some firm action and to know what LAPD is planning on doing. It's unacceptable that the ball just keeps getting punted on this. And we've sent dozens of emails. We've filed these reports. I have incident numbers. We're told by 911 when we call, we get put on hold. It's a war zone behind our house. And we installed security cameras because what we got was kind of a disbelieving attitude from LAPD that this was really an issue. And I think now that people are seeing the videos, they're realizing what a problem this is. We have drag racing behind our house, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. How is this going to be handled? I know the park, they file police reports. There's vandalism, all the time behind our house. I'd love to know why we can't get a gate into this park. Why is it a free-for-all? There's no signs that are posted telling these kids you can't be in here past a certain time. All of that, there should be signage, there should be gates, there should be patrol. This is a multi-factor solution, and we just keep getting the same old excuses. It's been 3 years, and we've had enough. This has to stop. There's already been a kid severely injured who was apparently burned. We heard the screams, and I don't know what it's going to take to get the community's attention on this, and for everybody to finally say the police have got to step in and show up at this park. You have to be there Friday and Saturday nights. If I can go out and find these kids, so can you, Officer Aspen. Thank you.
So
Thank you,
Captain
Jennifer.
Gabalden,
So
can you?
really quick, in regards to the kid that was severely injured, the officers did go out to the hospital and meet with that individual and try to get information. The video that we saw as officers was from some of the kids that were down in that pit area that did the fireworks. And I don't know if anybody have seen it. I'm sure it got, because I heard it got posted all over the place. But the kid that got injured himself, we'll say. He jumped into the pit where the fire pit or firework was going off. And the individual that, when the officers went and spoke with the individual, he was this kid was very reluctant to give out any information of friends or any associates or anything that was happening. So there was follow-up on it, but there was very limited follow-up because the kid was reluctant to provide other information of who was involved.
Okay, the two videos that we supplied to LAPD that I sent to you personally, you can hear in that video names being shouted of kids. There's a lot of evidence in those videos. We never received it. We never received any response. We never were given any indication there was a criminal investigation opened, that forensics were done on those videos. Why weren't these kids involved in this arrested?
So there was no forensic evidence done, and just because you hear the kid's name being yelled doesn't mean that we know which kid it is. There could be hundreds of kids named David, hundreds of kids named Jason. So that is a little difficult for the officers to do any kind of follow-up on. Now, as far as a criminal investigation, there was not, to my knowledge, there was not a criminal investigation done. It was just a follow-up to try to get information because of the injury. So I do believe an injury report was completed, but there was no criminal investigation done in regards to that particular incident. Now, when going back to the videos, they're extremely helpful because it does paint a picture for us of what's happening, but we're limited in what follow-up information we're able to get. So yeah, we can get a video of a car speeding by, but if we don't have an actual license plate to follow up on, there's really no I don't want to say enforcement that we can do. What I have
Officer
done,
Espen, we have sent you video of license plates.
Yes. So hold on, let me finish. So when we have the videos of license plates, I'm able to actually go and talk to the registered owners of the vehicles and let them know that their vehicle has been seen doing speeding, donuts, whatever it is. But as far as enforcement, we are not able to issue citations or do any kind of enforcement based on a traffic violation. We can't do that. So with the license plate pictures, we can do what I do is a door knock. We'll go to the house and we'll go talk to the individuals or the registered owner of the car, but we can't prove who the driver of that car was at that time. We can just go to the registered owner's house and let them know their vehicle was involved in this whatever incident it was.
Okay, couple of things. Thank you, Jennifer. First of all, Captain Gabalden, can you speak to this idea that these incidents are recurring over and over in a pattern that seems to be identifiable, at least to the neighbors? There are certain times of the night, certain weeks or certain nights of the week. What of the idea that you can send a task force and see if you can nab these people? And then my second question is for Courtney and Jessica, and I'm not sure well, how about this? My second question is there a movement in this town to put up flock cameras or license plate cameras? And could that be helpful just as a deterrent? Not that you can arrest them, but you can knock on their door and maybe that makes the parents say, hey, kids, don't take the cars out. So Captain Gabalden, first can you do something? Can you take advantage of the habitual nature of this activity?
Oh, thank you, Miriam. No, definitely the habitual nature, it kind of elevates what's going on over there. This isn't just like a once-off thing that's happening once a month. What I'm hearing is it's a recurring problem. It's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed, and we can put resources in there. Like I said, our resources are limited, but we can put resources in, whether it's a curfew task force, whether it's what we're going to be doing this weekend to try to see what's going on with criminal activity in the park and the fireworks. I'm going to dedicate some some of the resources I have that are discretionary that I'm supposed to use for the violent crime that's going on in the division, I'm going to divert that to Brian and Sergeant Alpert so they can put some type of task force together. I'm going to have to pay for it later when I explain, well, what kind of violent crime was going on there. But it is a big enough issue that I see in the community and the members here that it needs to be addressed somehow. So, it's justifiable. It's all a question of, hey, these are the resources that we're going to give you, Captain Gabaldon. We want you to address the violent crime. Use that to address the violent crime. But I do have some leeway as to where I can put some other resources for some other things that are going on in the community. Like I said, I've only been here a few months. I have talked to a few of the community members here. I understand this is a problem, and this is a big problem where I think we need to put some resources in and address it. At least, if anything, to be in a deterrent, whether it's some citation, whether it's some arrest, whether it's some traffic enforcement, we can send a message at least that, hey, we do know that this problem is going on and we're going to address it with the resources that we have.
Okay, so A, I want to thank you. B, I want to let everybody know I just let Scott Wagenseller in. C, I see you, Courtney. I'm going to call on you. Captain Gabaldon, I just wanted to say, if it helps you for the community council, we wouldn't be able to do it today, but at a next meeting, we can agendize this discussion. We can pass a motion that would be in support of you diverting this discretionary resources to us. And if that gives you some sort of support, we're happy to do that. We also agree that it's at this point necessary. Courtney, I also want to note for you, Captain Gabaldon, and everybody else, a few years ago, like 7 years ago, there were motorcycle gangs that used to go up and down Sunset Boulevard habitually on Wednesday nights and Sunday nights. And we were told for years and years that nothing could be done about it until we pressed and pressed and pressed. Captain Nieto at the time was the captain. She convinced LAPD West Side Traffic to put out a couple of those task forces. They did it for a couple of months, and frankly, eventually it worked. I mean, I know the motorcycle gangs maybe come around still once in a while, but it's certainly not habitual the way that it was before. So I want to suggest to you that this investment that you're making will be valuable and probably make a difference. So Courtney, and then I'm going to bring Scott into the conversation.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity again. Regarding the flock cameras, those are cameras that need to be placed on private property, which Jessica and I worked over a year on, secured locations, and then reach out to work with Jessica and I have done for over 2 years. Scott Alpert, who's on this call, knows that he has been the constant when we've had, different LAPD local officers, and we've gone through now our current captain. So Scott's been here through all three of the captains. Scott has been the constant. We were asked to not do the flock cameras because LAPD can't interface with them. We were asked to sit down meeting with the camera company that they do use. We had the meeting. We thought it went great. We have followed up with them 6 times since June, and we've heard nothing back. So as a community, and Scott, you know this, it was mentioned at the beginning that Jessica and I have reached out on occasion with LAPD. That's untrue. PPRA and Jessica and I personally have reached out with LAPD constantly and on a very regular basis. And I know the captain is new, so I'm very happy you're here to see our level of community involvement. But it's not just us. We have a very involved community, not just to be a pain in anyone's rear. We have real problems and no one takes it seriously. So we're not going away. These problems clearly aren't going away, and cameras are not going to fix it, because we'll get the footage and then it'll be, oh, well, we can't prosecute because they're juveniles. Oh, we can't prosecute because the DA we have. Like, we have to do something. Like, this is, are we waiting for kids to die? Like, I don't understand what the end game is here.
Okay, thanks, Courtney, and thank you for the effort to get those flock cameras going.
May I speak, Mary?
Yeah, I was going to say, LAPD, if you are able to get your chosen flock camera company to respond to them, that would be great. Nina, you have your hand up. Who's the person who wants to say something? Oh, Captain Gabaldon, go ahead.
One thing, Miriam, I was able to reach out to our ITB, who is our division that deals with the cameras, and I have a name for you, Courtney. Contact. I don't know if it's someone that you know or have dealt with before, but I'm gonna email you that information, that contact information, because it was given to me. I just got it, actually, a response. You think sometimes you guys wait for a response? I sent an email and text out to the captain down there, and it took me about a week and a half to get back to me with the name and contact number. But I do have that for you, and I'll go ahead and email it to you.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Miriam, can I just chime
Yes.
in for a second?
President
So
Upton.
I will get off. Actually, I'll be in tomorrow, Boothie. So, and I will reach out also to that company as well and ask what's going on, Courtney, to try to get them to respond to you and find out, what the hiccup is. I apologize. I didn't know that they had not gotten back to you. I thought that you were dealing with them one-on-one. I did see that email go back and forth with them, and I figured they had called you, but they didn't. So that's my bad on that. I will make sure I try to get them in contact with you, because yes, you have been very proactive in trying to get that done, and that will help us out. And that just involves, we could have any company, but that company would be easier for LAPD to work with. So that's why Courtney's trying to do that for us, Courtney, and also Jessica as well. I just wanted to cover one thing that's kind of been going in the chat, and it's why is it that we give you information or we do a crime report and now that person's not arrested? So although sometimes it can rise to that person being arrested, like Brian mentioned, it could be juvenile diversion, which is kind of the way the judge acts when it comes to juveniles, right? So the judge actually acts like a parent. In fact, that's a Latin term, meaning that anytime the judge can give diversion or give something of a lesser penalty, he or she will, because they look at a juvenile as we can try to rehabilitate that person before they get to be an adult. So although it's great, it can be a really good deterrent. Even if we were to take them and cite them out, understand that sometimes it could be as little as taking them back to the parents and giving them a cite. It could be taking them to juvenile hall for the night, but then they're getting them out like the next day. And then what also is going on, and it was kind of briefly mentioned, is that I know we'll get all these emails from people, okay, it's this kid, and they'll give us a name, but understanding that that's a witness now. So now what happens is we need that parent to get their kid or that kid to come over to us and actually tell us what happened. So even then, sometimes they will finally do a report, but there's not much information on there. So once Brian or maybe a patrol officer does that report, as I mentioned, it goes to the detective. But now that detective does their follow-up, it could be our juvenile car or it could be our detective, and they go over there, and now that juvenile does not want to say who it is. It doesn't matter what their parents telling them. So as we talked about, now there's not much for us to go on. We can try to convince them as much as we want, but if they don't feel safe and they're not going to give us more, I know it's frustrating to all the community members because you believe you know who did it. And maybe you're 100% right, but we have to go off the actual facts, evidence in front of us. We have to have that, or the city attorney or the district attorney is not going to do anything with that. It's going to be basically rejected, and that case is going to be closed. So until we can get that buy-in from that victim to actually give us that information to pick that person out of a six-pack or to identify who it is, there's not much more we can do on it. And then understanding that this is a juvenile. So we're not telling you that we don't want to do anything. We're not telling you that we're not going to do anything, but understanding sometimes that penalty is not going to be what you want. And we're not making excuses. We're telling you just the way that it is. These are the facts, whether they're fair or not, right? We're apolitical, and that's a system that's set up. So understand that I can tell you for a fact that Brian has been going to these schools, right? Because I oversee him. He is taking that initiative. If he gets a license plate, I know he tells me that he does follow-ups to those houses. He doesn't tell everyone in the community he's doing that. And when it comes to juveniles, obviously they enjoy that confidentiality. So he's not going to tell you who that kid is, what he did, what parents he spoke to, what our juvenile car did in certain circumstances, because we can't, if that confidentiality is there, obviously, we don't want to let the community know who that person is, their date of birth, and so forth. There's a couple other things that were mentioned as well that I know while Brian was speaking. So understand, if you have that information, if you can call the police, I know it's hard to wait online. I get it. And Brian was talking about me. I'm the one that called to try to see what that wait was. And it was 45 minutes for myself. So I get it. I get how long it takes. I get that frustration. But sending Brian an email is not the same as generating that incident number. That won't generate an incident number. So just understand that we need that. It allows the captain now to dedicate more resources when we know that there's 30 radio calls to that one area. It allows that, even to the point where if we're getting our neighborhood prosecutor involved or we're getting the city attorney's office involved, having all that documentation, having all those radio calls, it allows us now to utilize that office as well. So those are all things that we need. I don't know what else was covered in there, but I get the frustration of the community. I get how serious this is. And then understanding when it comes to fireworks, right? If it's possession of a large amount, then that's generally going to be a misdemeanor that we can cite them an RFC, and we can't actually book that person. But if it's a small amount for recreational purposes, generally we're just going to cite that person and they're going to be released. I understand that's probably not what you want to hear, but those are the facts, meaning that they're going to be released if it's an adult with a citation, and they may or may not show up to court. And if they get cited, if they're a juvenile, generally we're going to take them back to their parents, just like Brian mentioned, and their parents are going to be aware. And we will do those necessary follow-ups. But understand that what's been the case so far, I even had a mom that I spoke to on the phone that said that she was going to come into the station. Her son was willing to name who that person was. To this date, that has not happened. So that's been part of our frustration, but understanding that we know how serious of an issue this is. That's why Brian took all those steps. I personally spoken to all the watch commanders who worked the night or who worked the morning watch. I was here when they called that unit and said, spend as much time as you can between radio calls down there in that area at that park. I understand. I think one of the things that was mentioned as well is, why do we have a UC unit in the park? Why can't it just be officers? Well, because we actually want to catch someone. We know if officers are there that no one's going to do anything in the park, which is a great deterrent. But if we want to be proactive, we want the officers out of the way, and we want our undercover officers inside the park. That way, when they see the kids doing it, they can now call the officers in and they know exactly who did it, because they're giving us descriptions, and now it's from police to police. Okay, so that's the reasons for us using UC officers, undercover officers in the park, so that we actually know who did it. If, let's say you call, it takes us 20 minutes to respond. When we get there, generally that juvenile is either it has already used the fireworks, or they're not there anymore, or, so there's not a whole lot we can do in that circumstance. And if the misdemeanor is not committed in our presence, right, then oftentimes, that involves someone taking a report, or a private person's arrest, and so forth. I just want to make sure that you have all that education. It's not that we're not aware of this issue. It's not that we're not trying to do something, but there are limitations to what we can and can't do. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergeant Alpert. That was actually a lot of great information that I think was probably useful for people. So Nina and iPhone, I see your hand up, but I do want to turn the floor over to Scott Wagenseller. I don't know how many people on the call do or don't know who he is, but Scott is a longtime member of this community. He owns Palisades Patrol and Gates Patrol. He is very much sort of referred to as the eyes and ears of the community. LAPD knows him. They work with him at times, more or less, but they know him and they work with him. And yes, it is Gates Patrol or Pally Patrol that shows up a lot of times. That's who we often see in the village. Scott, it came up on the call that you are engaged, you're a private security company, but it came up on the call that you're engaged by a lot of people who live in the Huntington, and the park happens to be in the Huntington. And so could you possibly swing around to the park? Could you kind of, have your patrols poke their noses in there and either be a deterrent or make arrests? Can you tell us a little bit about that, what you do in the community and what the park looks like from your point of view?
Certainly. I briefly,
that was a quick text and you joined. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So private security is a proactive, preventative measure. So our role in this whole equation with safety and security is to prevent problems from occurring in the first place. When they get to the point of actions that have been done or crimes that have been committed, the police are the ones that actually get involved and solve that issue. Our real value to all of our clients is being able to get in on scene and to prevent problems from occurring in the first place. So to that extent, we do have a number of residents in the Huntington who do call us on a regular basis. In fact, they're not the only ones. We do get a lot of calls for clients along the bluffs. This is the Beirut Bluffs area, Silomar, and Villa de las Olas, where a lot of nighttime activity occurs. And we do make a presence, and generally through our verbal judo, through our presence alone, and through our inspirational methods, we're able to get people to move along and not become a problem for our clients. So our objective is to protect our clients' interest and their quality of life. And to that effect, our officers are trained to try and minimize their impact, these people's activities, their impact on our clients. In reference to the park, it's similar to Silomar Bluffs, similar to Villa de las Olas and Beirut. They're all LA City Park properties. The balance that we have is that we've been getting a lot of calls from the general public because they know how effective our officers are. Just by being there, they know how effective it is to have their presence. And so we're getting a lot of what we call servant leadership calls. And these are calls that are not from clients, and they're on public spaces that are of a public interest. We can't sustain that. We've had a number of clients who call us using their what we call their basic patrol service, and they call us for these community issues, and it's just not something that we can continue to sustain. We don't get tax dollars, we get client money, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to protect their particular interests. So in regards to how can we help the park, or how can we address some of these public space issues? Well, more people would need to sign up. It's that simple. We would have to have more neighbors sign up for our patrol, more neighbors sign up for our alarm service, our camera service. And through that sphere of influence and that additional funding, we're able to put more officers out in the street, and we're able to spend more time on these things. But you know, we've tried to approach several neighbors that are impacted directly from these Silmar Park, and we've told them, hey, if you want to have us down here more often, we can get into an hourly basis. An officer can be present here hourly, and they chose not to do that. They chose to go. I think they actually engaged another company, which has been sort of a train wreck in itself. After we told them not to do that, the results were not the same. If you don't have the trained patrol officers that our officers are, it can be a real liability. Security guards generally are not trained to address the issues that you want us to deal with. We have a very extensive field training program. We have a real rigorous selection process that we look for maturity, and we look for the judgment of the officers to be to meet our standards. Most security companies don't have that, and they're not interested in doing that. So it's something that we can provide. If you want us to get involved in these park spaces, I would ask for the city park to be somewhat approving of that. We're essentially walking on Parks and Recreation property, and you know, they really should be a client. And it's not unheard of to have the city of LA or Parks and Rec contract with a private security company to do just that. We've done it for the city of Malibu. We've been engaged in other places that have no problem doing that. We manage about 10,000 acres of open space currently between Ventura and LA County. So we have a park ranger service.
I'm going to stop you there. I think everybody got the idea that you can be helpful. You are helpful. You have the same constraints as LAPD to some degree because you also need funding. Clearly, you get it from a different source than they do, but LAPD will also say that their resources are fleeting because of funding. And so I think we all understand, you know, in order for either of you entities to do more, you need more. I get it. Something that we've talked about, the board knows because we've talked about it for a long time, is some form of a public-private partnership that would enable us to put more eyes on our open spaces. I think if there is something to be done there, then it would be a synergy of the park and LAPD and some sort of private patrol. So that idea that you just put forward, Scott, is something that we obviously have been talking and will continue to talk about until we can find a sweet spot where we can have some solutions. In the meantime, it sounds like Captain Gabaldon is giving us it sounds like Captain Gabaldon is giving us some extra resources so that LAPD can put some task forces on the park. Hopefully that's going to be helpful. You know, maybe Scott, if you and LAPD are in conversation, you'll know what they're doing, and you know, maybe that's kind of a good thing.
We do.
Yeah, I know you're in contact. So clearly we're not going to solve this problem today, but I feel like we've gone a little bit further. At least we've gotten Courtney and PPRA to have a connection with, or Courtney and Jessica to have a connection with the camera company. And again, I think those flock cameras we have come to understand would be great. I know they need to be on private property, but thank you for going down that road. Thank you for bringing this to us. LAPD, all of you, thank you for being on this call and finally informing the community that they do have to wait that 45 minutes, that, you know, emailing Brian is not the same thing as making a report.
Miriam,
Captain, thanks again for giving that.
Mary, if I can just one insert here, Miriam, if I may, in regards to flock cameras, we do the same thing. It's just that we wouldn't have that subscription base and you would have more control over it. So when you engage flock, just be advised, you lose control of the images that it creates. I do not recommend it for any of our clients. We do Mandeville Canyon, and the problem is with Flock, it becomes a third-party management asset, and you lose control of your cameras. I'd never recommend that for my clients. I always recommend
So it's not Flock, it's just the camera service, and we can talk about that.
Well, Flock is, and we do all the license plate stuff as well, and have full capacity to do robust camera systems. So, and we do.
So we'll make sure you three parties are in touch to see how that works out. So it's 7:30 and I've got to wrap this up, but I am really glad everybody got to hear this. iPhone and Nina, quickly, let's just give you guys your comments, and then LAPD.
Thank you.
The beginning of a conversation. We're going to keep going. Brian, thanks for sticking around. Please do keep us a little bit more informed. I mean, you're at these meetings every 2 weeks. You give us your crime report, which we're grateful for, but Sergeant Alpert just gave us a list of things that you do that we never hear about. So I think it would be beneficial for the community to know. You don't have to give us names, but when you make your report, it'd be beneficial for us to know that, you visited Pally High twice this week and you talked to the deans and somebody got pulled out of class and spoken to, or, you picked up a license plate and you went to someone's door and you spoke to people. I think it would just be helpful for us to know that you guys are on it. And it seems to me that community input and community suggestions are helpful. They've been helpful on this call. So I'm hoping we can continue this. All right, iPhone, I don't know who you are, so it's just.
Yeah, I'm Bill. Thank you for having me on. No, thank you. My name's Bill. I live next to the Pally Rec Center, and a couple comments. Number one, I can tell you that deterrence works in the park. I have seen the Pally patrol cars out there on many nights, and it's quiet. Nothing happens. And so just a car being there or occasionally kind of coming in and out, that shuts down pretty much all the activity. So, thank you for, spending the time to go through there, Scott, with your team. But when they're not, it's a total free for all. And all night long, particularly on the weekends, you've got packs of kids going in and out, cars going in and out. And why not? I mean, it's wide open, it's dark, and there's nothing. There's no gates, there are no cameras, all of which would do quite a bit, and there's no signs. And it's amazing to me that there isn't a single sign anywhere in that park that tells you what time it closes. And it closes at 9. So I think for starting, putting up signs, it'd be great to find gates and cameras, but at least putting up signage to let people know, like, this park isn't open all night long and you're committing a misdemeanor or whatever if you're here after hours, and this is what the misdemeanor is for fireworks. So I think delivering the message to the kids as a start would be a start that, this community has had enough, and we're going to start enforcing the rules. Thank you.
I did make note of signs and gates. You would not believe how much of a struggle it is to get basic signs up, but that is something.
I believe you.
And gates, discussion has been had about a gate. Some people say that it's not cars that are the problem. So people say that if you put up a gate and you close the gate, the kids who want to get into the park are still going to get into the park. Cars are not the problem, but you guys are saying
they do. Miriam, thank you for that's a really good point. It's both. I can tell you, living next door, it's both the cars go in and out and the kids go in and out. I think it would do some good, and certainly it's delivering the message that the place is closed.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
I'll bring that up again. I'm going to have to stop this conversation. LAPD, if you don't, I'm going to give Nina the last word. We've got to stop, but I'm happy to have another community meeting. Maybe it's one where we invite the kids to come and listen to, LAPD. I'm happy to entertain another meeting, but right now it's going to be Nina and then we're done. I thank you all again for coming to the meeting. Nina.